Let's take the presentation. Can you hand the control to me? I have it.
You should have the control.
There we go. Good morning. Welcome to the Transformative Approach to Content Management. We're going to talk about a little bit about why you want to take a different approach to content management and where it affects things in your company. So I'm assuming that most everyone has already taken the leap and moved content into smart structured content, and you've adopted XML. If you haven't, I figured that's the first place you want to go. Want to start content. Expands very quickly as soon as you're in structured authoring, and because it's more shareable and more reachable throughout your enterprise. Perhaps you've taken it one step farther and you've moved into DITA, which allows you to really break your content into topical pieces and reuse it to its best capacity. But no matter, it may not just be DITA, but no matter what you've adopted, you still have a need to manage content assets. And that seems so strange. Janice, do we have a question?
Yeah, we have a question. Sorry.
It's okay.
We have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So one question is, do you have any ideas? So back to the XML. First question was, why again? Why is XML important? That's one question.
Okay.
And the follow-on question to that one is, do you have any ideas of how to get content into XML and DITA from like a FrameMaker environment? So I know those are loaded, but there you go.
They're great questions. So let's start with the first one, why you want to go to XML. XML gives you the ability to pull content and use it pretty much anywhere, anytime, anywhere. You're going to be able to do things with it. For example, if you're using something like Microsoft or FrameMaker, you've got something that's more proprietary in nature, and content is siloed into big blocks, especially Word, right? You got one great big Word document. It's hard. You can't create a little piece that you reuse in multiple Word documents because Word just isn't structured that way. Things are changing with Word XML, but not really enough. I'll leave that where it is, and anybody who wants to hear more about the specifics of Word and XML, we can talk about that separately. So the whole point of structured content is that you've got the ability to separate form from content, and that you're authoring in what we call an archive format. You're not converting from one presentation format to another where you've got content duplicated all over the place, and if you've got an error in one place, you've got errors in 6 places, and you've got to go find them, and you maybe forget where they all are. When you've got structured content, you're writing in one place, and you're transforming to all the presentation formats or all the different languages, and you're transforming from the original archive source, not from all the different places where it's captured because of look and feel and audience requirements. XML gives you a lot more power to control what you're writing, who you're writing it for, and in what channel they're getting it. And as for converting content from a more proprietary or binary source to XML, there are lots of ways to do that. There's lots of more complicated. Depends on how much you're converting. If it's like 5 or 10 pages, you can copy and paste. If it's 10,000 pages, you really want to work with a vendor who specializes in that kind of content conversion. I hope that answers the questions. And I have several I can recommend that do both sides of the spectrum.
So, and that handled the question about converting content into XML, but what about converting to DITA was the other question that they had.
That would be, DITA is an XML format, so there are extra complications when you're converting to DITA if you are not, and there's trade-offs between whether you get really good DITA or you get your content converted. I've seen really great presentations by a good friend, Don Bridges, who addresses this issue, and he's a great presenter, and I think we should do a presentation with him sometime soon.
So does Don have anything publicly up online that we could perhaps send a link to the listeners so that they can view that as well?
I'm sure he does, and if you want a copy of the slides from the last presentation I saw from him at the Joanne Hackos conference, I believe, last year, it was a great presentation, and I can certainly point you to him and to it.
Okay, we'll make sure we include that then for all of the attendees here. Thank you. That answered the question.
Great. So let's assume you're already in XML. I mean, that's part of, if you're looking at content management, you're either already there and you're thinking about content strategically, not just in the sense that you're writing content for a particular audience, but you're looking at how content is consumed and produced across everyone who's creating it in your enterprise or in your company. And that's what I mean by content being a strategic asset for your company. So, because content itself is an asset for your internal consumers. Do you have a bridge or silos? And this is all about content is key collateral for your company. Engineering uses things from sales. Sales takes things from marketing and engineering. Service takes them from both and augments and changes. And training has to use things from everybody. And you want the message to be consistent, the same, high quality, same message, same features, same everything, and you want it to be consistent across languages. And all departments are creating content, and they're all using it from each other. Unfortunately, these departments are often operating in silos of isolation, or at best, they're doing some kind of limited collaboration through different collaboration tools, and unless you're thinking strategically and designing your content with an understanding of the power and reach of that information and the significance that that content holds, you end up with a disjointed and fractured information rather than a single source of truth and a consistent message to your internal and external customers. So all of these groups, they consume information from each other, and they all give feedback to each other. Marketing, product development, service, all of these people are consuming and producing content and information, and you've probably got a whole lot of different places that you're storing it. So, but this is what I mean by content being an asset, not just for your internal group, but for your customers. Content has three main objectives for your company. It's to attract, capture, and retain customers. It is, and you need to plan for that to work for all customers in wherever they are. So I've got a friend, actually, who was researching buying a new piece of equipment. He was looking for a power supply. It's a multi-million-dollar power supply. And he went to one company to find the specs for it because it's got to fit into this big laboratory that they have, and they've got very specific power requirements and consumption requirements, and he was looking for the specs to find the replacement part. And he went to the website. He couldn't find anything. He contacted them. They couldn't find anything, couldn't get it back to him, and he basically decided he was going somewhere else, and he was never going to work with them again. He could not get the information he needed when he needed it to make his decision. Now, it could be that he was looking at them because that's the name that he remembers as being the best for power supplies. It could be that he went to them because the power supply he was replacing, that's the name that was the company that provided it in the first place, that came with the equipment, right? In which case, they just lost a customer that they would prefer to retain. I mean, it's not just the cost of acquiring a customer, but of retaining them. And if they can't get the information they need when they need it, at the time they need it, then they're going somewhere else. So content really is an asset, and you need to invest in it, and manage it strategically if you want to make sure you have your customers continuing to come back to you. I mean, and it's more challenging the more content you have, and we've already seen that it's in all of these departments, and everyone's consuming and creating content, and there's a million places that you're storing it, and it's all over the place in your enterprise. There's content management, there's source control content management, there's enterprise content management, web content management, documents, social media, component content management. There's all, this is the traditional space. Everybody's got, a content management piece of the pie somewhere in the enterprise, and there's probably half a dozen of them. There's a SharePoint site, or there's a SharePoint site for your group, or there's a SharePoint site for another group. We've got a customer who shuts down half an hour every day so that they can move stuff around between SharePoint sites, right? That's a huge waste of time for everyone in the company. So what do, right? You need to come back to the three main objectives. And where are you, and make sure that you're looking at content, all the pieces, who's consuming, who's producing, and what really is, where should the authoring be done, and what is just display. So here's the typical challenge, and in most enterprises this is what you see. You've got content developers in whatever group, authoring, cleaning up, updating, formatting, reviewing content, and creating it over and over again. You've got them producing it for internal content consumers who are readjusting or tweaking the format or changing this or that, and maybe they're printing, or maybe they're going to web, or maybe they're going to CD-ROM, and that content is stored already in probably 2 places, if not 3 of them. And you're then producing them and putting them into more content management places for your external customers. Maybe a knowledge base, maybe web content management, and maybe someone out there is doing web design and editing the files once they're already there. You lose the links back from your external customers to your initial internal content developers because it's all pretty much one way or contained within each little silo and each little group. But in the end, everyone's still trying to get their content aligned with the same messaging to the same place and to those same customers. And for the most part, in the same languages and in the same formats. The whole goal is to make sure that your content is where your customers are. Get to them where they are so that they can find you, right? This is sort of how it works. And this is what we see typically. You've got the line here in the middle, which is sort of the demilitarized zone, the stuff that's internal versus external. And you've got content duplication in all of these places. So say you have a problem and it's reported through your Hungarian website that you've got an error in the spec sheet, in the one that got translated. Well, the Hungarian web team can contact engineering, change that site, change that page, and put it back up, but you didn't fix it for English, for French, and you didn't do it in any of the internal places. So maybe sales now has the wrong information, and they're going to lose deals because they've got the wrong specs that never got updated because it was updated out on the frontier, way out in the web content management system, and never passed backwards, right? Because there's no tracking up or back, upstream or down. And this is the challenge, and it gets harder the more groups you add, internally or externally, the more languages you cover, the more products you cover. You acquire a company, you get all of their infrastructure as well, and you get all of their customers in their places, and maybe they're playing in places you're not. You know, how are they updating to Facebook, or updating to their Twitter feed, or to their corporate blog, or where? All of those things are part of this challenge. So, however, there is hope. What can you do? You know you need to be there, because if you're not, you're going to lose your foothold. I mean, I can think of one company in particular who dropped the ball in adopting a strategy, and we won't, name names, but despite the fact that their products were superior in their market space and they were years ahead of their competition, they just didn't show up with the correct content for their customer. Soon, potential customers began to get the impression that that company was gone or fading away. And of course, the exact reverse was true. But try to convince a community who by then has been wooed away by the competition, or who adopted a transformative strategy for content. So that's sort of the thing, right? How do you do it without losing all of your company's profit to get you there? That's the first question. So that's what we're going to answer a little bit more today. We're going to talk about the tools used from creation to delivery. And we're going to talk about how you take your content creation to multiple media channels, such as social media, and instantly publish it or connect it with your customers anywhere that they are looking for you. And if you are where they're looking for you, then you're saving yourself time and money. You're not going places where they're not going to be. You're not spending money. You're trying to find customers where they're not. They don't exist. So the whole idea, for us at least, those of us who have been doing XML publishing, dynamic creation of content, and multi-channel delivery, the reason you do structured authoring and you separate form from content, the reason you start authoring in your archive source and not in your presentation format, is that then you have one central location where content is created, authored, and maintained, and that it acts as a single source of truth for all the rest of the presentation formats. From that one place, you can connect, create and fix the errors. From that one place, you can then auto-generate your output formats and have it translated or have it created to be your product brochure or your website or your newsletter or your Twitter feed, if that's where your customers are monitoring something that they're waiting for. It's fairly straightforward to have, for example, in DITA, your short description, if that's a piece, it's a piece of the DITA structure. There's something called a short description, and it's just a basic, small, really short description about what's in that content. And if it's written in a particular way or it's owned by different groups and you're really sharing and have workflow process, that can be your message that says to your customers, hey, this content, short description, has been updated. I know you're waiting for it. Here it is. It's ready, right? And you can build workflows and control the content from that single place where it was created and managed. So the key behind all of this is an idea called component content management, and it's true content asset management from the single source of truth. From this point, this is where you are looking at content in pieces. It's not a brochure. It's not a book. It's not a topic in the knowledge base. It's not a field alert. It's not just the brochure that HR puts together to attract people to come work for your company. It's not the collateral sales is creating for their presentation tomorrow. It is all of those things. When the content is broken into little pieces like a library that people can then assemble and deliver. It makes the creation much more managed. It makes the message consistent. It gives you the ability to have workflow and review because you're looking at content as components, as pieces, as paragraphs or sentences or words or larger pieces. It depends on how you want to build things together and how your content is consumed and produced. The first step is always to look at your information and content lifecycle and see where those pieces are so that you can gather them into this one single source of truth, this one library of content that then can be leveraged, managed, and delivered to your customer wherever they are in the manner in which they are looking for it and what they need. And this is sort of what the goal looks like. Rather than that big messy slide, you've got one content component management system in the center. It has the ability to have permissions and you know, dividing the control up so that you can have automatic generation and you get web content management sort of embedded inside of it, right? You're delivering it out to those places and you're not separating it from there. You've got the internal groups all doing authoring and layout and illustration, and they're doing everything on their side, and they're associating all of that content with the one that needs to go out and be delivered to your customers so that you can see how the pieces on one side get gathered together, rearranged, formatted, illustrated, laid out, and then delivered out to the proper channel where your customer is looking for that content. And this is the goal. Rather than a bunch of different silos in a bunch of different places, you have one place that gives the delivery and associates all the content together and can track where is this component used? How often is it accessed externally? How well did this one piece perform in all of these places? When you've got content in multiple silos, you can't get that kind of benefit that you're getting from analytics. for your content. How well does this paragraph perform when it's in a PDF versus when it's on the web versus when it's in a newsletter? It's harder to track that stuff because you've got to reassemble all of that data if it's available. You've got to reassemble it all and then reassociate it back and see who authored it and why and what audience it was for. And you can't, it's not easy to do when content's duplicated and placed in multiple content repositories. When you have one content management where everyone's authoring in the single place, you're gathering those components, rearranging them, formatting them, laying them out, and delivering them in a consistent manner, same process, to the channel that it matters. You can track all of that stuff. You can see where it comes and goes to. Do we have a question, Janice? I thought I heard something.
Again, if you have a question, please feel free to type it in the question box.
Sorry, I thought I heard something. Okay.
No, there's no questions at this time.
All right. So hopefully I've convinced you that content really is a business asset, and it allows you to capitalize on making the most use of all the content pieces. It gives you the ability to do on-demand publishing, profiled publishing for specific customers into multiple channels, and it lets your team collaborate confidently, right? They know that the piece that they're embedding has been vetted, well-tested. It attracts customers. They know the state of it, and they can use it and put it into their thing and know that it's correct, right? There's no question that the spec that they have is the right one or the wrong one, or that the bug didn't get all the way through, right? You know that you're using the original authored archive source, so you know that it's right. Because if you're doing any fixing, that's where it's fixed. And that's sort of the idea. So, and I can tell you that I spoke with two different companies over the last year who are finding that content not only is an asset, but it is driving their business. One is the largest bus company in the world. They were working with a Star Translation company, and they found that content was telling them what products to build and what customers wanted. And they went from being just a small bus company in Michigan to the biggest one in the world. They supply buses all over the world to multiple places in multiple languages. And they did it because their content told them what they needed to build and for who. And they were able to get there and do it. I can also tell you that we had a presentation, I guess, middle of last year, and we had on with us David Lorenzoni did it with 4 different people who are 5 and 10 years into their XML and dynamic publishing systems, and Andy Piper on the presentation. You can sign up and see it. He talks about how their documentation now ships before the product does. Their process is so streamlined. They know where their content is. They know how it assembles. They know where it goes and how to get there and how many languages it has to go to. And they're so tightly embedded now with all the rest of the content creators and with engineering and with product management and with marketing and sales that their product documentation, right, there's Toro, they make lawnmowers and other equipment. Their product documentation in 22 languages was on the docks, ready to ship 6 weeks before the product was finished and out the door from the manufacturing house. And that is nearly unheard of. In most cases, when you hear people talk and why they're going to XML publishing, they talk about the translation costs and how it's 6 or 8 months later when engineering is finished, 6 or 8 months after that before their product information is ready and they can actually ship their product out the door. Pulling in that by 8 months and then even 6 months before the product is finished gets your product to market faster than your competition, faster than anyone, and it gets that back, gets your customers happy and ready and up, and you're succeeding faster than you ever before. So content really is an asset, and it really can drive your business. These are just 2 of the best examples I heard in the last year, and I think they're just the beginning. So let's talk about what everybody wants from their content management system. Well, one of the first things everybody wants is associativity, the ability to see where content is, where it goes, how it's used, how it performs, and then be able to track that back and forward. Everybody wants records management and audit trail, and these are some of the things. Many of these things you'll find in any of them. It doesn't matter which of the alphabet soup items that I had in the slide in the beginning. Almost everybody's got audit trail, record management. Most of your content management systems will have metadata management or search capability. How much, how little is depending on where it is, and how well it works together, how many of them you have to search, and who will aggregate that information. Permission, controls, information lifecycle, blah, blah, workflow, automation, data retention. These are some of the standard things, and if your content management doesn't have these kind of things, then you're looking at someone who's more deficient. These are the things everybody wants and sort of expects at this point. We're, fairly far into the content management software maturity time, and this is all pretty much stuff everybody wants and should expect from their content management. So, but that's not what everybody needs. We hear a lot more what you need is access to information outside of your department. The ability to update your content and have notification that somebody else has touched a piece. When you've got content components and you've got this single source of truth and you've got everybody working on content that they have access to or parts that they have access to, it's far more important to have a notification system and the ability to know how your changes affect other people. And this is part of what I mean by associativity and reporting and the rest of the stuff that needs to be as part of your component content management. Because when you're dealing with content that's this broken into pieces, it's harder to track where it's going and what the ripple effect will be. It's certainly not difficult if you've got the proper tools in place, but it is a change in the way most people work and think about what they're doing. People who work in the web team in isolated, siloed, sort of traditional companies, they'll make changes to the website all the time and you won't even notice. I think eBay will make changes on a 4-hour turnaround. But, most of us are not eBay, and most of us are not having that issue. And we want to know for sure whether the change we just made, is it used in a brochure? How is it used in a brochure? Does it go onto a postcard? Does it go into the newsletter? How many people does this affect? And so the ability to update content and instantly understand whether the one that you work with is changed or is being manipulated and how it happens, that's extremely important. Everybody needs to be able to streamline their process, especially in a complex environment like this. And you need to be able to think and respond strategically rather than as a reaction. Rather than in traditional tech pub circles, writers will create something that's called a doc plan, document plan, what content goes into their document and what they need to write, what's new and what's old. When you're thinking strategically about content and looking at content as an asset for your company, you're sort of doing the same thing at a much higher level. Where is the content going? Who's using it? Why do they need it? How do you write it so that it goes for a particular audience as well as for a particular format? And how do you break that stuff into pieces? And this is what I mean by responding strategically. You don't want to just have to react and say, oh my God, sales says they've got a great big deal, it's got to go to Japan, but it means it's got to be translated. Well, if you weren't planning for that and you've got things in Word, your costs can be pretty high and your time to get it there can also be very high, especially the first time out. Part of the requirement when you've got traditional publishing methods, not only do they have to translate the words, but they've got to relay out all the content. Got to put in new page breaks, got to do the language layout. If you've gone to German, the words are much bigger for callouts and graphics, and things change a lot. And so there's a lot of costs there that you want to be able to plan for up front. These are the kinds of things you might want to look for. These are the kinds of things I look for when I'm looking for content component management, and things that I care about, at least, and most of the customers that I speak with. How easy is it to use? How easy is it to put together and get it up and running? what kind of support is there for training? Are there videos? Is there documentation? How much documentation? Do they have SEs? Do they have a certified training? How do your people learn best? That'll help you tell which kind of training will work best for them. What kind of user community is it? Have you talked to other customers? If there are a lot of people developing on it, or is it, are there only a few developers and they're all in Europe and you're in the U.S.? What kind of support is there for updating and upgrading? And how often do they happen, and what's that model look like? And in the end, really, does it solve the problem that you need today, and will it help you grow into the future? And the one caveat always is, for most software components and most software systems, you're looking at 20% maintenance. In 5 years, will you be able to get out, or are you stuck? If it works for you or if it doesn't, will it grow with you, or will you be able to grow into the next level, right? Elementary school versus a college level kind of a way of looking at things. So, but these are just some of the things that I tell people to look for. And, when you're looking, make sure you be aware of the pretenders. Some things that look like content management aren't necessarily. I wouldn't I tell the story earlier about the people moving content between SharePoint sites. If it's not doing what they need to do and it can't be automated and handle those things, then I'd say it doesn't really solve their business needs. And so really, you need to watch out for those things. In the end, this is what a nice harmonized solution would look like. And this is the one that we saw earlier. This is the goal. You got a place where you're creating, and you've got all your content authors, your designers, your developers, your translators, your illustrators, your customers maybe, all contributing content. There's a product that I used to follow that they had an active development community, and they really needed a way for content that their customers were creating. They're creating plugins and add-ons and all this other stuff, and then it gets built into, it's an open source kind of solution. But they have their customers creating content that they want to then package up and make available to other customers who are using those plugins in one location, so they don't have to go 18 places to see it all. And that's a very difficult proposition to handle. So you need to find out whether your model needs that or not. And then you got component content management. It just handles data content, but does it handle the rest of the content that your enterprise needs? Does it do Excel? Does it pull information in from SAP? Where is content? Where does it go? And what handles it? And you really need to have a very strong view of what your needs are before you go I need content management and I need web. Right, that kind of will kill you. So in any case, this is who we go backwards. There we go. Personalized delivery, right? Does your component content management will let you automatically create all the formats in all the channels that your customers are looking for it? How easy is it to connect? How hard is it? We saw a presentation. I guess I saw one last year. A company who had taken SharePoint and implemented component content management, and it was presented as a win, but the reaction of the audience was, I can't believe you're reinventing the wheel. They'd spent 1.5 years developing, and they'd only gotten the basics of content component management that they could have purchased anywhere, and they'd had a whole team of consultants building this for them for 18 months, and they were only halfway to where they wanted to be. Yeah, there's differences between CapEx budget and resources budget, but at some point, that money all comes out of the same bucket. And you want to make sure that you don't get something that doesn't satisfy your needs or deliver to the content to the customers who need it. So that's pretty much what I've got to say about this. This is who we are. We are long-time players in the content management, dynamic publishing sort of environment. We've been around a really long time and love it. There's always a new place where content is being consumed or produced, and we like finding that stuff. And if you want more information, as Jana said, we'll be sending out an email with a link to the presentation. And you can always contact us at the phone, on the web. I'm on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. I think we're everywhere. It's kind of fun.
I have a question from the audience.
Yes, ma'am.
Can complete localization be handled in content management system?
You can certainly have, a lot of the vendors are now linking between content management. Some are, you got translation management and translation memories that need to play along with authoring teams. So a lot of them are now building bridges and coming into that space. It's mostly separated, but I think that's the last one. Most of that's, in a good component content management system, even if you send content out to be translated, when it comes back, it'll be associated with the original content. So if the original changes, you can automate the sending that back out, have that one piece altered and updated in the new language, and then returned, and then you can do the tracking. That's the key. As long as you can get that content both in and out of the content management system, your single source of truth, then you're still way ahead. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Again, if you have a question, please feel free to type it in the question box. I know we covered a lot of ground.
We like to hear, and we love to hear stories. Tell us your story.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions at this time, so it looks like we're going to be able to give you the gift of time back. So thank you again. Oh, one more question.
Okay.
Okay, do you see some CMSs that are specific to an industry? Well, that's a very good question.
That's a hard question to answer, actually. I really want to say no. I'm sure that there are some that are. I don't know that they do all the things that I would want from them, right? Usually those are specific to an industry, like web content management is specific to web. For me, web is an output format. It doesn't need its own content management. So there may be some that are specific to industry, but do they do all the things that you want? I can't answer that question. I do know that there are several that typically appear in particular industries, but it's not because they're unique features that go to that industry, but more because that company targeted that industry and that's how they sold in. Like you'll see a lot of Documentum in pharmaceutical, but there's nothing specific about Documentum that makes it more attractive to pharmaceutical than to manufacturing, because you'll see it there too. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I would really look at features and requirements rather than these are the top content management for pharma.
So then we'd go back to the things to look for slide that you shared. Do you want to flip back to that one?
Yeah.
What to look for when you're looking for. So, and that would apply to any industry.
Right. All of these things are in any content management system and should be. These are the things everybody wants. But whether it's what you need, what your business requirements are, that's really where you need to start. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
It did. They said actually great answer. Thanks.
Oh, good.
Okay, I have another question here. Hang on one second. Oops. Bear with me. So, so we have somebody who's working in as a consultant, a documentation consultant, and they face the issue of integrating specific authoring software to a CMS.
Okay.
So how much is the authoring of software relevant in maintaining a single sourcing concept, or is it just the CMS which is relevant to single sourcing?
Good question. So I would say that the same rules apply, right? In that, there are end-to-end pictures and there are ones that you put together. When you're putting them together from multiple pieces, then your requirements you need to include in your things to look for and in your business requirements where do my vendors draw the line and how much work is it to bridge? Sometimes that gulf between the two vendors is bigger than you think. What you want to avoid in the end is a phone call where you've got all the vendors on the phone and they say, oh, it's that guy's fault. No, it's that guy's fault. And no one has an answer, and you still can't get your stuff out the door. So I would say that, but it's not insurmountable. Some of them play better together with other pieces and some don't, than others do. How much work it is to build those bridges and how much, put a cost to it. Put a cost to it, and that will tell you your answer. Like, how much does it cost to build, maintain, if you're building tools, you're growing a software development company in your company. Make no mistake. So put a cost to it and find out if it's worth it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that was really, really good. Now, I have another one that I kind of need to piece this one together, so bear with me.
Okay.
For web content, if using CCM, your content would be in XML, but our web is in Cold Fusion, so it would be transform XML to Cold Fusion for web, ? Then added to this, basically, our website is in Cold Fusion and we don't plan to move away from that.
Right.
Would a CCM be beneficial?
So I don't know enough about Cold Fusion. I think that is mostly technology to make it run than really managing the content. So I think that if you can, I think that content management, the single source of truth still helps that case, right? Because it lowers the burden on the Cold Fusion code. Cold Fusion then just needs to focus on, taking the content, manipulating it, and doing the stuff with it. But you're still delivering it in the format that Cold Fusion needs to consume it with. That's what I would say. That it lessens the burden on the Cold Fusion team if you've got good content management and the single source of truth, delivering it in the. It's just think of it like going to PDF or going to HTML, going to Cold Fusion, right? I think that will help in that case.
So you'd kind of view the Cold Fusion as a customer.
As a channel, yeah, as a consumer.
Okay, okay. So another question, this is a really good one. Sorry. What do you think about operating in DITA without a CMS?
That's a horrifying proposition to think about. DITA is a unique technology. It can explode from a couple of, you may have like 4 books that are 4 Word documents. That can be 4,000 topics, 4,000 files in very short order in DITA. You can get pretty far for a good long way, but at some point that's going to be too much for you to go, I know I had this somewhere and I want to use it, but I can't find it. Then you start duplicating content and you're in the same mess you were 5 years ago. Like you never went to DITA for any other purpose. And you're sort of losing all the ROI you would get if you're not able to manage your content.
So basically you could get started in DITA without a CMS, but it's going to be really soon when you'll need a true CMS then?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that question.
That's a great question.
Do we have any other questions? Feel free to go ahead and type. So again, we are recording this presentation as well as the Q&A session. Once we transform the recording to a presentable format online, we'll go ahead and send you the link to where you can access that recording for future reference.
So, and if you don't get it soon enough, send email and we'll point you to it if you can't find it.
Yeah, and it usually takes me a couple of days before I get that out to you, so give me a little bit of time. Bear with me. Okay.
Well, I hope it was good.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and your questions were great. Liz, wonderful presentation. Always a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.